So it's been a fascinating journey for me in building Postman over the years. And I'm so excited to have you at our first conference today. And we have a really great set of talks lined up for you. But before I go forward, I wanted to invite Ankit, who's my co-founder, on stage. And I think Abhijit is not here yet. He's probably answering support tickets. So if you have heard from Abhijit, he's very, very passionate about customer support. I think he also answered some questions that came up on the workshop yesterday. So I would like you to say hi to Ankit. Hi. Ankit was the first person who quit his job to work for Postman, work with me at Postman. And if Abhijit was here, I would have given more context. We've had this whole intern-employee relationship. That's how we started working together. So I was an intern at Yahoo when I met Ankit, and Abhijit was an intern at my first company. So we had this experience of working together. And what we learned was that outside of whatever we do, we just want to work together to build something. And when this opportunity finally came, Ankit was like, I'm just going to quit whatever I'm doing. He did go to see the World Cup in Brazil, and that's why the founding of the company took 2 months longer. But he did come back. For those 2 months, I was a little nervous. Maybe these vacations change people's minds. But he did join, and Postman got started. So we'd have him on stage for our founder Q&A and another panel. And yeah, I'm really excited to be working with Abhijit and Ankit. So some of you might have used Postman as an HTTP client, right? And you might wonder, why do we continue building one over all of these years with a larger and larger team? Well, our story is tied very much to the evolution of APIs and how they have taken center stage in modern software. So a few years back, APIs were an afterthought. You would think about APIs after you would finish writing your code, and you would then think about, OK, how does this work with everything else? And in some cases, they were not even written at all. Right? So you just forget about APIs, and then the integration problem arose, and everybody was frustrated. So I found myself in this world at my first job at Yahoo, where I was an intern with Ankit. And there we were building a front-end application, and our job was to integrate a bunch of back-end APIs to make this application work. And what we found out was that working on this API was a pain. And the API was in this constant state of flux. It was changing. It was not tested. It was not documented. And we had to literally run to our manager's desk to find out how things were. This wasted a lot of time for everybody. And let's just say that nobody was happy about the intern. From there, I went to co-found my first company, where I was the CTO, and I was building a front-end application and a back-end application. We were sort of building this social street view, and people could capture panoramic images, put them up on the web, and share them with others. And that meant working very, very heavily with APIs. And we were a 4-person company, along with 10 interns, which is where I met Abhijit. And things here were also very messy. I was building these APIs. I was trying to test them. I was trying to share them with others. And I found out that working on APIs in general was kind of a pain. Whether you are at a big company or at a small company or in a small team, it just is a hard problem. And the tools that we were using were tools like curl. Now, curl is a great tool. It gives you a lot of power. But it was fundamentally built a few decades back for another set of problems. And what I found out was that I was testing API calls in curl, and I would make mistakes. And sometimes other people would give me these text files with curl commands, and that was essentially API documentation. And this bothered me quite a bit. Why do we continue using these tools which make our jobs harder? And sometimes these tools don't work, but we blame ourselves. Right? We are like, OK, it's probably me who's the problem. And to simplify the life that I had working with APIs, I did what every lazy developer does. I built a side project. And that's how Postman came around. So this was the first version of Postman. And it was built to do one very simple thing. I just want to send an API call, get the response back. Can you show that to me in a pretty way? It also logged the history calls on the side. And that was it. And we just found out that this very simple thing made the lives of everybody around me easier. People could now send API calls easily. They could really work in a much better environment. So encouraged by this, I put this version of Postman up on the Chrome Web Store. And it just took off. People started recommending Postman on Stack Overflow. It started showing up in conferences. People started using it in Teams. And it just grew purely through word of mouth. And the only promotion I did was this Stack Overflow answer, where I posted that, hey, I'm building Postman. It seems it might be useful to you. And it started getting a lot of upvotes. And for a long time, I was more excited about my Stack Overflow ranking going up than Postman usage. And along with people using Postman more and more, they also started suggesting things that Postman could do better. And that was very exciting. So these are the first few issues that people started posting on the public GitHub tracker. And it's like, wow, it's already there with people, and it's making a real impact. And that was happening for both small teams as well as large teams. In fact, to such an extent that a team from the US sent a $500 check so that the development of Postman doesn't stop. They just wanted more and more of it. And that was like, it just blew my mind. How could a side project just go so fast to such an extent? Of course, along with the feedback that we received on GitHub, people didn't have good things to say about our logo. So the old logo, some of the old users might recognize this. That's the one on the right. And I picked it up from the web. I had rights to use it. I checked. And I slapped it on the Postman app, and people are using it. But they didn't like it very much. So I thought, OK, Postman's growing, so we should have a nice icon, a new logo. But we didn't just want to pick up a logo. We wanted it to represent something. So we didn't go with this traditional idea of Postman, going around the house and delivering mail. We wanted a modern day. We imagined a modern space-age Postman, something that goes from one planet to another. And I really liked the idea. Unfortunately, it didn't come cheap. And most of the $500, and at that time, 1/3 of my savings went into building this logo. So very quickly, Postman went from 0 to 500,000 users purely through word of mouth. And we weren't even a real company yet. That's Ankit in my Bangalore apartment. We had this kind of aisle, and I was setting up my desk next to him. And Ankit had just come from Bombay. But we were just excited to work together and build Postman. So as we started talking to more and more people, and people started telling us about how they're using APIs and what they're using Postman for, we started wondering what exactly is happening. And we had to define APIs for ourselves. So for me, APIs are the boundary of a code base. They help you abstract out complexities, and they give you a very simple interface which you can recombine in larger and larger systems. And today, organizations use tons of APIs. In fact, a modern organization can be seen as a graph of APIs talking continuously to each other, sharing data, executing operations. And it just makes things much more efficient. So we have seen APIs in 3 contexts. The first one are public APIs. These are the ones that are most visible to everybody, at least to us when we started out. So these are the ones that you use from companies like AWS, Stripe, PayPal. So the things that are available to you as a developer, and you can integrate these APIs with just a line of code and get powerful functionality into your application. The second one we saw, and they were not so well known, were partner APIs. So these are the APIs you use when you're collaborating with a company. These are not available publicly, and you have a business relationship with someone, and they give you your APIs to work with. And the third one, and the largest category, are private APIs. These are the ones that you build yourself. And there are tons of technologies available to you to build private APIs. You can use language frameworks. You can use containers. Microservices are also private APIs. So essentially, these are the things that contain your business logic, your secret sauce. Now, the question is, why build APIs in the first place? Well, APIs help you iterate faster because you have these independent components that you can work on. And essentially, teams and organizations can all work together, because they have well-defined interfaces, you can improve things at several levels. You don't have to take everything together. And of course, you get a lot of reuse. Something that you built in one place can be reused in another place. APIs also can be imported from outside your organization, so you don't have to build everything yourself at all. And essentially, APIs help you focus on your core competencies. You don't have to do things that you don't want to do. You just acquire it from somebody else. So as we studied this, we realized one fundamental shift that's happening in software development. We felt as founders that modern software essentially is moving to a world where software development begins with an API. Right? You start thinking about APIs first rather than your code base. However, moving to this world is not going to be easy. We saw with all this feedback that we were getting that there are two fundamental problems in moving to an API-first model. The first one was that the tools that you use to build APIs don't talk to each other very well. So you have to do things over and over again. And that wastes a lot of time. The second and the larger implication for this was that teams who use these tools don't talk to each other very well either. So you create these silos in which everybody is working on their own thing, but when it comes to talking beyond boundaries, you get stuck. And that's where most of the friction lies. So when we started Postman, we felt we could do better. We had these shared experiences ourselves working on APIs, and we had this huge Postman community, which was giving us this feedback to help us do better. So formally, as a company, we started in 2014. Today, we are more than 50 people across our 2 offices in San Francisco and Bangalore. And I moved here in San Francisco in 2017 because our most passionate users were here. And also because they send you $500 checks without asking. So Postman today has tools for every stage of your API workflow. You can design and build mock servers in Postman. So you can start with Postman instead of starting with your code editor. You can, of course, debug your APIs in Postman. You can build powerful automation test suites and connect it with your CI/CD pipeline. You can create beautiful-looking documentation pages in Postman and publish them internally and externally. And if you have your API available through an external endpoint, we can monitor these APIs for you through our monitoring service. And if you have a public API, you can use the Postman API network and distribute it to the millions of developers who use Postman every month. Now, you might wonder, how do all of these tools work together? Well, to make them work together seamlessly, we invented collections. So the way to see collections is, they are an executable description of an API. They contain everything that you would need to drive your API workflow. Things like API request responses, documentation, your scripts. So Postman essentially helps you build collections very, very easily. And then these collections go into these tools, and these tools then operate using this data that's available to them. And we found out that collections also played a big role in our growth. People started sharing collections, and they started recommending Postman by giving people collections. So instead of just saying that go and use Postman, now developers started sharing collections with somebody else so that they could get started with their workflow faster. And this started happening with both developers as well as large companies. Companies started recommending Postman with collections for their third-party developers. So if you have a public API, the API publisher could just give you a collection, and you can get onboarded much faster as a developer. So this was very exciting. But as people started sharing collections more and more, they wanted faster and faster ways of sharing. They wanted to literally stay in sync with what a state of a collection was at a particular point in time. And to solve that problem, we invented workspaces. So workspaces give you a real-time collaborative environment through which you can work on collections together. Either you can work on your tools in your context, or you can invite other people to a workspace and work with them. And this is a fundamental change from the traditional way of how collaboration is done, which is through source code repositories. And we felt like that model does not fit in this API-first world. Because when you're working on source code, you, of course, want to make sure that you don't break stuff when you pull in somebody's changes. But with APIs, if an API changes on the other side and you don't know about it, then your stuff is automatically going to break. So that's how workspaces work the way they are in Postman today. And workspaces automatically merge and pull these changes. So you don't have to do any extra work. We'll automatically give you the latest copy of things. So workspaces are pretty real time, and they are flexible. So we built workspaces in sort of a non-opinionated way. We felt that there are lots of ways in which teams will structure themselves, and there are already these 3 broad buckets of APIs that we know of. So we have to make them flexible. So you can use workspaces to work on private APIs. So if you are building APIs together with your team, you can set up a workspace for them, and they can build their APIs together. If you have partners, you can invite them to your workspace, and they can work with you. And if you have public APIs, you can publish them on Postman and manage them in a proper workspace. So workspaces essentially help you scale Postman to your entire organization pretty effectively. So as we built all of this, we realized that Postman is not an HTTP client anymore. It's an API development environment. Just like your IDE gives you all the tools that you use to manage your software dev lifecycle, and ADE gives you all the tools that you use to manage your API lifecycle. And the Postman app today is a full-fledged API development environment. But that's not all. Postman also, as a company, gives you a command line client so you can run collections on CI/CD servers that you run on or on your servers. We also have a powerful API that you can use to extend Postman to your use cases. And we also have powerful integrations to help you integrate with the developer tools that you use that have been built by somebody else. And finally, we have the Postman API network to help you distribute your APIs. And we are not the only ones who are building Postman tools. We saw that other people are building on Postman. So we have QuickType that helps you generate full-fledged type definitions using Postman collections. We have Appimatic that helps you translate Postman collections to whatever schema definitions you want. So there are lots of other companies and vendors that are building, they are consuming Postman collections and building these tools. So when we saw all of this, we saw that as a company, we are building a platform for modern software where development essentially begins with an API. And we've seen massive adoption in this platform as we have built Postman over the past few years. Today, we have more than 5 million users and more than 2.5 million monthly active users. These users create more than 500,000 collections every month. And they are present in more than 100,000 organizations. Almost every organization in the world today uses Postman. And with the recently launched Workspaces feature, we see more than 250,000 workspaces being created every month. But Postman has not just been about metrics. Our growth is reflected more in the community, essentially you. And we've been seeing this love from the community from day one. Speakers have been going to conferences and demoing Postman and their APIs around the world. They've been holding meetups and talking about how other people around them can leverage Postman. And some of those speakers are here today, and they'll be on stage today, and we are very, very excited about that. So we feel this is just the beginning. There's a lot coming up, and we have a few exciting announcements to share today with you. We have not announced them before. So for our enterprise users, we're announcing role-based access control to help you manage your manage your Postman deployment more effectively, so you can manage who has access to what collections and what workspaces, and you can give them granular permissions so they only have access to things that they should have. And that helps you operate Postman in a large-scale environment. Along with this, for everybody who has a Postman account, we're announcing free collaboration, which means free team workspaces for everybody. So if you have a Postman account, you can invite as many people as you want for free and just experience the power of team workspaces for yourself. And one of the other things that we noticed was we can't build all of this ourselves. And we are working on making Postman more and more modular so you can also contribute to the development of Postman. So we've been building this plugin framework that you can use to build and extend Postman. And to show how this can be really powerful, we are announcing two really awesome plugins to showcase this power. So the first one, that's one of the most asked features on our issue tracker, is GraphQL. So using Postman, you'll be able to send GraphQL queries really, really quickly and efficiently. And you'll be able to import the schema, author your requests, and just work with GraphQL queries in the same way as you work with REST APIs. REST APIs are not behind, though. We are also building a plugin for the OpenAPI ecosystem. So you'll be able to import your OpenAPI spec files and carry forward with the rest of the tools that Postman gives you. So all of these things are going to be rolling out over the next few weeks. And I'm very, very excited about all of the stuff that's coming up. And there's more. There's lots coming over. Our goal is to ship something new every single day. And that's how we've even structured our engineering teams. They all work on APIs. So we've had a fascinating journey, from an HTTP client to building a platform for modern software. And we are super excited about this world of APIs. We are fortunate that we are playing a key role in this. And I'm super, super excited to see what's coming up. So with that, I would like to thank you for coming to this conference. We have a great set of talks lined up for you today. I hope you have a fun day. Thank you.